Okay, so this is a very short video on how to use these airways, or technically they're called air corridors in this particular example. I mean, these go back to like the 1970s, 1960s, 70s, maybe early 80s. This is like way before sort of ICAO, the International Civil Aviation Organization, sort of like come up with, like, if you like, the modern day sort of rules, procedures, so on and so forth. But the basis was already there, because ICAO never came into effect, or came into effect with the Geneva Convention after World War II. So it's they still haven't been going very long at this point. Right. Anyway, I digress. Right. So you can see the border running down here. Right. All of this is Soviet-controlled airspace. You know that. That's not changed. Right. We do not have free access to these airways. We've got, or if I call it an airway, it's a corridor, right? But it is what it is. So air corridor north, centre, south, right? Happy days, right? That's the easy bit. But there's limitations on flights in these corridors, all right? So I'll choose north first. We'll just have a look. So you can see that this is a bit of an odd one, because you can see where, and this is really accurate, right? Really accurate. You can see where the border is. So you sort of like enter here, but then you sort of you're in it, you're out of it a little bit there. You're in it, you're out of it. It is what it is. But basically, as soon as you get up here, then you start to go in. Same as normal, if you're looking to go into a corridor, you will get the warning that everyone you get as normal, just to say you're approaching the airspace. And if you're not going in the corridor, that's like, yes, get out of the way. The only aircraft that can use this flights are transport. There's no military, combat aircraft allowed into these areas for obvious reasons, because it's a bit like the Trojan horse. You could send in a load of Phantoms, Harriers, Jaguars, whatever, and then all of a sudden attack from within. Have a double pincer attack. So it's like transport aircraft only, I'm afraid, chaps. And that's limited for us at the moment to the Hercules, for obvious reasons, Chinooks and Hueys. At the moment, that's the only aircraft that can use it. It's just the way it is, unfortunately. Anything else just activates. If any other aircraft goes in, you just activate the whole the whole system, a whole air defense system, throughout the whole of Soviet controlled airspace, Soviet managed airspace. Right, so you'll notice there's lots of black lines. What these indicate is like known navigation routes between various points, and you can you don't have to use those lines, right? It is what it is, but but that's the way it's marked out. That's the way it sort of pretty much would be in real life, right? When you look at a like an airways chart or something like that, right? Okay, high level chart. Right, so this particular airway here for the Northern Corridor, right, sort of really starts up at Lima Bravo Echo, up at all the way up here to the north, and it links down to Bravo Kilo Delta. I don't know what the name of it is, but it is what it is, right? And then it continues down. So you can enter. You don't have to go all the way up to Lima Bravo Echo to come down, but if you want to, you can, especially in the Herc. But I wouldn't want to do that in an helicopter. But you can join anywhere along this route, and then so for instance, you could just go up on here and then come in direct to Bravo Kilo Delta. Now you'll see that there's height limits. All these. First off, these air corridors have got lateral and vertical limits, all right? Because it's airspace. All airspace is three-dimensional. Even in our modern world, right? You look out the window, there's a whole different world out there, right? You just can't see it. So these have got width, obviously, right, and then height limits as well. So you've got a lower limit and a higher limit, and you must stay within those limits. Now, a normal airway in modern terms, pretty much, give or take, is like 10 miles wide. But these are a little bit different. These are 17.8, and this is pretty much 17.8, give or take 100 meters. Yeah, they're fairly wide, and you can see that there's dedicated routes for each one. And each one of these dedicated routes is specifically designed to take you to the three. I'll try not to zoom in too far because otherwise you can't. It gets a bit messy with all the. There you go. To Tempelhof, Tegel, and Gatto. So you can go straight into any one of those, right? So you enter via Bravo Kilo Delta, and then depending which one you want, you're either going to head for Gatto's, Takan, or Tegal's, but you're not Tegal really, because you can see this has got a dog leg. We'll come on to that in a second. Now you can see here, for example, on this this track here, like if you go straight down to Gatto, the vertical limits of this airway track is 2,500 feet. To 2,400 feet altitude, so it's basically it's like quite narrow. That is the limit. You must transit through at these levels as indicated. If you go outside of the vertical limits, then you will activate. You will get a couple of warnings from Berlin radar, and if you ignore them, then the military will get involved. And they'll say, look, you need to adjust your limit now, or we will shoot you down. And they will. So you need to adjust, all right? As soon as you adjust, happy days, like they go back to sleep, eating vodka and sausages. So it's fine. But if you do it again, if you have a level bust on that, then it will all kick off again. And it won't end well. So you need to stay within the vertical limits. And this is real, right? It ain't hard, right? But it adds realism. Right, because when you go flying, you just don't fly anywhere you like. When it's like you can't do that, right? There's nowhere in the world. Well, there probably is in the world, but in reality, there certainly in the airspaces like we would be operating in, or you would encounter normally throughout the world. There's airspace. You have to adhere to it, so you can't just take off and not, don't think about it, just go in a straight line. Don't work like that. So anyway, we need to follow these legs, right? So we just need to make sure that when we cross Bravo Kilo Delta, or in fact, when we come in here, because you can see it starts up here, 2,500 feet. So we need to enter this airway, 2,500 feet. That's altitude, that's based on QNH. So it's obviously adjusted for sea level. So QNH, you need to make sure that you check the briefing and adjust your altimeter in the aircraft to the QNH as indicated in the briefing. Otherwise you're going to be out, so for example, or as we're using it in here, because it's time period correct, we're measuring pressure in millibars. 1 millibar equals 30 feet. So if you're a few millibars out, it has it's not going to be the end of the world. But then if your flying is not 100% accurate, right, that makes it even worse, and then you're just going to activate. You're going to get shot down. So setting your altimeters is really key here, as is reasonably accurate flying. Now it doesn't mean to say, right, you've got to fly exactly 2,500 feet. There is a little bit of give and take, right? If you're 50, 100 feet low or high, it's not really going to make a lot of difference, right? But as soon as it gets a bit more than that, then you're going to have a problem, all right? But you can play with it and try it. But we're going to need accurate flying from everyone in these airways. So as we come down here, we're going to be at 2,500 feet all the way to Bravo Kilo Delta. Then we're going to, if we follow this route all the way down, this is a simple one. So you go Bravo Kilo Delta, you'd have this Takan / VOR, I don't know what it is, I can't see it at the moment. Not really, I think it's Takan, but it's irrelevant. Have this point tuned in, and then you just fly that straight line all the way down. So this one is pretty much 2,500 feet, but it does drop down to 2,000 feet as you approach this area here. So once you get down, drop down to about in this area. Like once you sort of hit this point here, you can always get a distance from here to work out roughly where you are. But you really want to be about 2,500 feet, and then as you get closer to the airport, sort of within 15-20 miles, you can drop down to 2,000 feet. And then happy days. We'll talk about this in a minute. This other one's a bit different now because it's got a dog leg. So this is a navigation point. I can't zoom in anymore because it don't get any bigger, but you can maybe zoom in on the video. This is point Urkis, right? You'll notice it's in brackets, right? This is a named navigation point. There's no nav aid there. It's just a position, okay, which is like based on a lat and long, a physical position. So to get that point, in reality, pilots would just put that name into their nav database. Their nav database would recognize that. They'd know where it is position wise, and happy days it's marked. You can't put on anything like the Chinook and the Herc, you can't put the name in. That's why it's in brackets. Anything in brackets, it's a fictitious name. These are correct names, right? So back in the day, that was a point. You could put that in, and bosh, it'll take you to that point on this dog leg. But nav points change, right? Names change. They change, and they can be duplicates. So you might have like Urkis, which is pretty. Well, they're all unique. They're all 5 letters, 2 syllables, right? That's a prerequisite for these things. But with regards to that, there could be another one, but it might be either in another part of that continent, or it could be the other side of the world. So when you put, like for instance, if you put that nav point into your navigation system, you'll come up, if there's 3, it'll come up with 3. So which one do you want? Do you want to go to Australia? Do you want to go to China? Or do you want to go to Germany? And you just choose the one you want. And it normally comes up with the closest one first. But because these are not real now, right, in the navigation data that we've got, because I've made this based on real world stuff, and the levels of detail don't transpose. So we have to use the lat and long. All right, so the lat and long is in the format that the Herc takes, and I'm pretty sure the Chinook will take that as well. The only thing you need to do is don't put any spaces in. So this one is north 51, 52.09, and then east 012, and then all that. But you just don't put any spaces in. Just put it in one long thing, and with that data, and you'll be good. And then the nav point is always right on the corner of the box. I position these text boxes so it's right there. I've flown these routes, and they're all pretty good. All right, not all of them, but I've done like 60-70% of them. A couple of more left to do, maybe this week. So that's your point there. And then all you do. So if you're doing it in a Herc or Chinook, for example, it'll take you to there, and then it'll guide you down to that one, and then this will be obviously in your database as well. And so all these are going to be in your database. Happy days. So that's with regards. So don't put anything in brackets, right? That's its real name, but doesn't exist in any databases we got. And that's all you do. Just follow the routes. Happy days. Maintain your height. And that's great. If you deviate a little bit from this track, it's not the end of the world, but bearing in mind there could be traffic coming the other way, and you've only got you can't go sort of like going into a Stuka dive bomber to miss it, because then you're going to poke the defences. So in reality, these things are all coordinated. This is not like Heathrow, back then. It's not that many flights. There'll be a few, but it's all coordinated, and depending which way you go in, obviously would depend which airway you've got. This one's very, very similar, but a little bit more complex in the fact that from this point here, Hotel Lima, India, it splits into 2. So depending which airport you need to go in will depend which leg, which one of these routes you need to take. And again, you can see we've got the upper and lower limits of that track. So just make sure that you're within those limits. Same thing applies here. So we've got a dog leg in the point here. So we just need to make sure we got that one, hit that one, and then we're down. And that's exactly the same. So that's the only difference. That is this one splits. Now this southern corridor is slightly different. So this one actually technically starts down near Frankfurt. This one sort of is centered. All airways have got a navigation aid through the middle, right? Like running through the centre line of the airway, so that aircraft can use their traditional navigation systems. Although they use GPS, GPS is, make no bones about it, boys and girls, right? In modern day terms, GPS is a military navigation system, right? So it can be not say turned off, but you could have a disruptor. Ultimately, it could be turned off, but it is what it is, right? So it's not so we can fly our drones, drive our cars, you know, find out where we are. It's not why. So they're all put up by the military. Right, so we've got what's in the early days, the original system, GPS, was put up by the Americans, and it had a disruptor on it, which meant that it wasn't very accurate. So, for example, we could fire a GPS guided munition, you know, like a Tomahawk or something, or you know, a butt plug, and you know, put it literally through a window. Because we had the codes, everything else, you know, happy days. But the Russians could, because it's an all-seeing system, the Russians couldn't use it against us. So there was a disruptor that, you know, that made it not very accurate at all. You might hit the bunker, but you wouldn't get, you know, you'd be really lucky to get to go through the exhaust vent, you know. But President Clinton signed a white paper back in the mid-80s, you know, because Russia became friendly and the Berlin Wall came down. So to make the GPS system available to everyone, they turned the disruptor off. It is still, you know, to a degree, you know, not pinpoint accurate. You're not going to find a blade of grass, but it's accurate to within a couple of meters, which is good enough for most applications. Right. So anyway, Foxtrot Uniform Lima. So you can pick it up anywhere here, but I would recommend that you pick it up from the nav aid. Follow it through. This one's 4,400 to 4,000 at the tops to bottom of 4,000 feet. It's quite, unless you're hardened, right? Unless you want to, like, you know, really push yourself, don't fly helicopters on this big one. This is like 100 miles. It's hard work. Go for the you know, and aim to go in the center one. That's more than usable. But this is for hardened pilots only, right? So you just follow this all the way down. So this one is actually centered on this point here, Aquina. So you'll go from Foxtrot Uniform Lima to Aquina, and then it splits off into three, going to each one of these airports, and it's doglegged. Two of them are doglegged. So the northern and the sort of like eastern track, if you like, has got a dog leg on it as well. But the center one, which goes to Gatow, there is a slight change, but because it goes from that point direct, so there's this change of angle of track is real world realistic. So in reality, pilots would go down here, and then once they hit this point, you know, they can see this. I've had to like put these labels. I had to be a bit tactical how I place them, because this is not, the labels aren't where they would be on the chart. So pilots would know as soon as they go down here, like, they'll need to be at this. But because of the way our system works, it's a bit messy. So the altitude for these tracks are all down here, because it's less, because these labels take up too much real estate here. This is not real. This is not a real world procedure, but I had to put something in, because you're going from, like, basically, you know, tops of like 4,400 feet here. You know, it does just down to potentially, if you're going down to Gatow, you know, that track is at 2,500 feet. So there's a big difference, and it could cause problems. So what we have to do now, we've got this thing. This is a Red Squadron thing, right? We've got a thing called an altitude change region. So in this box here, this is where you would need to adjust your height. This is giving you room, right? It's about 10 miles. So once you get sort of within about 8-10 miles of Aquina, and then this is on a river, you'll see this. You can then adjust your altitude for whatever you need for your next track. All right. So because this is between 4,400 and 4,000, if you're at 4,000 and you go into any of the, taking either the north or the eastern track, you don't really need to change. You're fine, because you're still technically on the limits. Okay, it's just that you're on the lower limit here, but you'll be on the upper limit on these here. But you'll be fine as long as you're, you know, reasonably accurate with your height. But if you are taking this one, this allows you to change. All right, so it means that then you can come in, because to be fair, this is where the triggers end. So this is like height-wise, there's nothing here. So it's not huge. So don't think you can do anything stupid in there, because you can't. Once you get in there, you can adjust, and then you'll be back in. You won't, apart from getting a warning, you know, that you've entered it. So like my data link stuff, it'll come up and say, all right, you're in the you're in the altitude change area, you can adjust your height as required and then crack on, and you won't notice it. Apart from that, that's fine. So this one's a little bit more complex and it's very long. As I said, probably advise helicopters not to use it, but it is what it is. If you go outside of the airway, any of these airway limits, airway corridors limits, you will activate the air defenses. If you are on one of these routes, right, minding your own business, right, and then some dick comes in and think, oh, I think I'm going to attack a base, and then all hell breaks loose, there's nothing you can do about it. All you can do is get low. If you work out where you are in relation to where's the safest place to go. So, for example, if you can make it, to your destination, in Berlin, then get on the ground and stay on the ground, right, until it's all safe. And the Rebel Scum airspace reporting system will let you know about that. All right. But if you try and continue on while someone else has entered the airspace, you will get shot down. The other night I did this. I sort of like took off from Gütersloh, did all this route round here, back over Frankfurt, up this airway, and once you start to get in this airway, I mean the radar warning receiver is like limited to like 11, 12 of the most high priority threats, and my radar warning receiver was just full of SABs. Right, I was right in the middle of it, and I was doing some testing as well. So the only thing I've done at the moment is to make sure all the triggers are working. I haven't actually done on multiplayer. I've done it on single player, but I've not actually gone in and made sure that they all work. But everything is working up to the point where the Rebel Scum Air Defense Commander issues a launch for the sound systems. This is also work in progress. So there's a hell of a lot more I'm going to put in, but there's only so much I can do, with the time available. Now, this circle here, right, is Berlin's control zone. It's a CTR. Okay, so that's a control zone. This extends from the surface up to 10,000 feet, all the way in this. So it's a cylinder, basically, from the surface up to 10,000 feet on QNH. When you're in there, happy days, you can do what you want in there, as long as you don't go above 10,000 feet or you don't break the boundary. There is going to be more stuff coming in where you'll get you'll get information from the sort of like more immediate sort of like controller around Berlin that's responsible for this area, but there's nothing at the moment, only if you bust it vertically. But there's going to be a lot more coming in, but that's what that's for. All right, but once you're in there, then you're fine. You can go up to any height as long as you don't break 10,000 feet. It looks tight, but there's more than enough room. I've landed a couple of these airfields with the Herc and whatnot. It's absolutely fine. There's no issues at all. But you just need to be aware of your surroundings. So it's like situational awareness, like is key with any flying, let alone airspace. Eventually, there's going to be, once we've all got used to this, I'm going to turn off where you are. So all you get is a map. That's it. Because just to make it, a little bit more real life with regards to navigation. So you can access this. All aircraft will have enough. Potentially, will have enough sufficient navigation aids to be able to navigate themselves around, and you can work out where you are in relation to, whatever. So if you've only got you can only get a bearing from one, you can get a bearing from the other, triangulate, and you can roughly work out where you are, and then maybe navigate using a feature. That's real, But if you've got more sophisticated navigation equipment, then situational awareness is a lot better. Anyway, so this video is like 50 times longer, same as always, 50 times longer than I wanted it to be. But that is the airway structure. All right, you would not believe the amount of time I've spent on this, getting this right, getting everything to work. It's huge, but it adds a really nice, really nice level of immersion. And especially when you're testing it and I was going in, it's like I felt like a spy. I went in with Tricky we felt like spies, and we just really didn't know if we were going to get shot down or not. But yeah, it just adds another little tiny layer to it. Okay, but I hope you enjoyed that. Please use it, because you know, I mean, I did it for my enjoyment, but I've also done it for your enjoyment. So please, please, please use it. Happy days. That's it. Any questions, you can just, obviously this is going to be in Facebook. You can ask questions in the what's his name, in the comments, and I'll answer that as required. There will be other aircraft that will be allowed to use it, so I'm going to add the Yak in with my what's his name, Chipmunk livery. So if you wanted to then to do, for instance, time, distance, speed, you know, like for example, I can't guarantee exactly where it's going to be, but for example, you could leave gutter slow, and eventually on the knee boards there will be I will put in that you can, you know, you can do your dead reckoning and you know, hopefully do it all visually. That's the aim, if you want to go that far, but it is what it is. So you can do, the other thing, just to be aware, you can go in, you can land, you can refuel, you can drop off supplies, whatever, and then you can depart and then go back up the air. And so the same will be exactly the same as if you are leaving a Allied controlled airfield at Berlin, and up you go. Just need to be aware is that there's only three, these three, Ghetto, Tempelhof, and Tegel. The others are red, okay, but they are still in. They're in like, you know, Soviet held. What's his name's airspace. There will be eventually. I'll stick some vehicles in here as well. So if anyone wants to fly in, they can pick up a vehicle, have a little drive round, you know, and then happy days. All right. But that's it. I hope you enjoy it, and I'll catch you later. Cheers.